On this special edition of Nebraska Stories, 5 intimate portraits of Nebraskans impacted by the Vietnam War.
These Nebraska Vietnam veterans are ready to take a trip. Sure, they'll fly to Washington, D.C. to see the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, but each one will also be taking their own trip, back in time, reliving memories of their service. Often painful memories they've tried to forget.
I will say there were a few times where, you feel that fear and you think, oh, is this going to be it?
Bill Cashell's Army Reserve Unit in Omaha was called to duty in 1968. The 172nd Transportation Company spent about a year moving supplies across Vietnam. When they returned home, many felt the brunt of an unpopular war.
At times, people would say, oh, were you in the service? And if you said yes, they'd say, oh, you must be a warmonger, you baby killer, or something like that.
That kind of homecoming wasn't unique to Cashell. Many of these veterans tell the same story, and an Omaha couple has been listening.
We want these men and one woman on this trip to be able to forgive themselves, if that's needed, and to feel the appreciation and thankfulness of a nation that they didn't have when they came home. That is just, it was so wrong.
Yvonne Williams and her husband Bill organized what's believed to be the largest group of veterans to visit the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. 654, all from Nebraska, flying to the nation's capital for one long day and too many thank yous to count.
1, 2, 3.
The veterans would spend the day at the monuments and memorials dedicated to those who fought for our country. They would feel the spray from the fountains at the World War II Memorial, stand beside those lifting the flag at Iwo Jima, and pay their respects to those who sacrificed all and now rest at Arlington Cemetery. At the Lincoln Memorial, Larry Fox's thoughts turned to his own service in Vietnam. His time there would change his life, and it all began with mail call.
I think every letter meant something to every guy.
The letters Larry looked forward to getting were from a friend named Lana.
His friend wrote me and said, Larry's over there, it might cheer him up if, you write him some letters. So I started writing letters and he wrote me back.
Larry, who loved to draw, wrote letters, but spent just as much time decorating the envelopes with signs of the time.
Right on, Mr. Postman.
Somewhere in the middle of those letters in the tie-dye envelopes, that friendship turned to love.
I adore you, Lana, and just can't wait till I can hold you again, doll.
And eventually, 43 years of marriage.
Burning, love is a burning something.
Probably, though, those letters, probably had a lot to do with it. I mean, if we would have grown apart when I was, when I was gone, and she didn't write to me and I didn't write to her, be a different story.
Like Larry, all of these veterans have their own stories. The Vietnam Veterans Memorial Wall often brings them to the surface. The names of those who never returned home with their stories are etched in stone here. The veterans spend time searching through the more than 58,000 names for that one childhood friend or that soldier they fought beside. Seeing and touching that one name on the wall can be overwhelming.
It's just unreal. It just it takes your heart away from you, just And so I don't know, it's quite the experience.
The wall feels like it's alive, like it's got its own energy, like there's some connection, like they're right here, you can feel them.
From his wheelchair, Dallas Puntney searches for the name of a high school friend.
He was my best friend back home.
And in the midst of the veterans on the wall and those crowding beside it, he finds something else he was looking for.
I've seen more warmth and sincereness today than I had in the 50 years since we came back. And it's healing.
As the veterans leave the memorial and Washington, D.C. behind, they arrive back in Nebraska, where an estimated 7,000 people turn out to give them a homecoming they'll never forget.
To see all these people, greet us and hug us and thank us for our service, that's what we never got before, and it just means so much.
Bill Williams has organized 11 of these flights for veterans from World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. He understands the value of a thank you.
There's a lot of regret from people about the way they were treated. They just want to make it up to them. And to have them walk through the crowd and people patting them on the back and handing them a yellow rose and a small flag, and there's some real therapy here.
Therapy that hopefully leads to healing for Bill Cashell and all these Vietnam veterans.
And we were part of something bigger, and I think that's what really did us was, we're part of this country, and we're soldiers. That was it.
Cheryl Fila was a nurse in a combat zone during the Vietnam War. Even so, she questioned whether she should go on the May 2017 honor flight.
I found out I was the only woman going. There were women over there. There probably needs to be a woman representing them.
Cheryl went, and the other 653 vets made sure she felt like part of the group.
I was just standing there, and all of a sudden, get her up front, get her up front. That was probably the coolest thing.
Cheryl saw many memorials that day, but the one she made a point to visit was the Vietnam Women's Memorial. And while taking a photo there, a young boy approached her.
I tried to explain to him what the statue was about. Well, when was this war? He said. I said 50 years ago. His eyes got huge. A lot of the public is unaware of what war is, what it's all about, and they need to know.
Kent State was a very political campus. When I hit campus in March of '69, I was a very confused man.
On April 30th, 1970, when President Nixon announced an expansion of the Vietnam War, protests erupted nationwide, including at Ohio's Kent State. Students held a peaceful protest, burying the Constitution. Tim Butts was there. He and another student burned their discharge papers as well.
The invasion of Cambodia really angered me. It was just a sign that this war was never going to end.
Tensions only escalated through the weekend, with smashed windows, blocked streets, and the burning of the campus ROTC building. The National Guard was called in, just in time for another rally on Monday, May 4th.
It was all circulated by word of mouth. By the time I got there, the Guard was coming back down the hill after having shot the students.
Twin soldiers and Nixon's coming. We're finally on our own. This summer I hear the drumming. For dead
saw people laying on the ground bleeding, people crying, people hysterical, people panicked.
The shootings left 4 dead and 9 injured.
Those young people that had never been exposed to violence all of a sudden saw violence unfold right before their eyes.
This wasn't Tim's first exposure to bloodshed. The young Ohioan served 3.5 years in the Air Force, doing a tour of duty at the Tan Son Nhut Air Base in Vietnam, a prime target of the Viet Cong during the Tet Offensive. Tim worked the flight line, inspecting planes before and after takeoff.
Life on a flight line is neither easy nor safe. And when you're working on metal aircraft in 100-degree heat day after day after day, it can wear you down. You know, it was so hot out there, you could not stay hydrated.
As Tim looks through photos with his wife, Barb, it is the darker memories of war that are tougher to shake.
Yeah, so this is me on top of a Vietnamese Air Force tank. This is the main gate to the base. VC tried to enter the base through here on the first night of Tet, but they didn't get very far on that one. I was on the night crew, and that first night of the Tet Offensive, we just knew something was going to happen. You could feel it in the air. We lost 6 planes during the Tet Offensive to ground fire, to rockets and mortars. And we lost 5 people while I was over there. One of them was killed on the first night of the Tet Offensive. He took an AK-47 round to the head. The Tet Offensive informed me that the war was unwinnable. The smartest thing that we could do was to get us the hell out of there and stop the bloodshed.
Going from Vietnam into a college classroom, Tim felt shunned, disconnected from his generation. But it was the shooting of his fellow students that pulled Tim back into battle.
I lost friends in the Tet Offensive. I lost a friend on May 4th, and both those things have had life-changing aspects for me. I can understand men dying in war. That's what wars are designed to do, is kill. But going to a demonstration on an American college campus, that's not a capital crime. 2 of the 4 students that were killed weren't even at the demonstration. They were just walking across campus when the National Guard opened fire.
Tim was a casual friend of Allison Krauss, one of the 4 students killed that day.
She was a kind young woman. She had so much to offer the world. How do you not be angry over that? It was all unnecessary.
Tim left school and began working for Vietnam Veterans Against the War, becoming one of the most respected behind-the-scenes leaders of the movement.
Yeah, that's Carrie, that's me. I was a logistics kind of guy.
And he was getting noticed. The FBI had developed a thick file on his activities.
At no time the Violent Gates did but urge violent acts against the government. You know, how can you advocate violence when you've been to Vietnam? It just don't work. The FBI was spying on everybody back then. Among my circle of friends, having an FBI file is kind of a badge of honor.
Tim realized he wasn't simply a protester or anti-war activist, but more of a social justice advocate. In the late 70s, Tim moved to Nebraska, got married, and spent the next 30 years of his career working as an advocate for the disabled, fair housing, and the Nebraska ACLU, before finally retiring in 2014.
It is an honor for the Department of Nebraska to honor Mr. Tim Butts with the 2017 Distinguished Service Award.
This year, the state chapter of the Disabled American Veterans honored Tim for his volunteer efforts.
It's really a sense of duty to help other veterans. DAV, this is Tim. I saw the way we were treated. The VFWs and the American Legions didn't want us because we were losers. You can tell me what you were doing there, and I understand it perfectly, but the VA rating officials don't. There were barriers with the VA. We're going to want to know how heavy a load you were carrying, how often this happened.
That just seemed unwilling or unable to address our needs.
These rating officials that are going to be looking at it, they weren't in Vietnam.
Being able to knock down some of those barriers for current veterans is highly rewarding, and perhaps a little bit of revenge.
With retirement, Tim has earned the right to slow down. But that's not how he and his wife, Barb, are wired.
Can you check on a status of a claim for me?
I enjoy a cold beer on a warm porch, but, you know, there's some things that just have to get done in life. And this is one of them.
You retire and you get out, and as if this were something to be done with and to be over. But, you know, there's a way of thinking about it, which is, what are you saving yourself for? You know, this is part of what you do. If you save energy and emotion or whatever, for what? It's being spent and used in a really good way.
Life is good. As long as I have 2 feet running, I'm going to stay busy, and I'm going to do something that benefits others and gives me a sense of satisfaction. These are my glory days, not when I was 19. Right now, these are my glory days.
Refugee, a person who has been forced to leave his or her country to escape war, persecution, or natural disaster. When she was just 16, Dr. Big Chow was forced to leave her home in Vietnam.
It's a nice, peaceful country until the chaos happened after the fall of Saigon.
7 years earlier, the Viet Cong had launched a surprise attack on South Vietnam. And with the fall of Saigon in 1975, it was all over. The communists had won. The Americans were leaving. And as one Vietnamese put it, a black curtain descended over our country. Dr. Chow's father was sent to prison to be re-educated as a communist.
Then my mom not only have to support us, be a father, be a mom, she make food and go to the market and try to sell food and exchange for goods to raise us, 4 of us. That's why they decide to escape and get out to the freedom country. Mom and Dad told us, go to the river, play with your friend, don't go home until dark. And then I saw my parents come down, and then we went into a little boat. We took off from there.
It was 1980. Thousands had been escaping on boats since the fall of Saigon. Half of those boat people would never make it to freedom.
You face with pirates, you face with hunger, you might even lost your life on the way and not make it. If you got caught, the communist people would put you in prison and they would take all of your belongings. You will have no house. You probably won't be able to go back to school. You will have no job. So basically, you lost everything if you don't make it.
They took off from their home in Ginkang province, trading their small boat for a larger one holding 98 people, and headed to a refugee camp in Thailand with a few days' ration of rice and water.
It's very difficult. I could not sleep for 2 days. I got seasick when I first got onto the boat.
Pirates infested these waters. Thai pirates who would steal their money, their food, and their daughters. They outran the pirates and eventually reached Thailand itself, where they were rescued just as their boat began to sink. Big Chow, with her parents, her sister, and 2 brothers, joined hundreds of other Vietnamese in a refugee camp made of straw houses. But now the Thai pirates were everywhere. At night, her brothers sat guard at each entrance. Her parents slept on either side of their daughters in a protective cocoon.
There is no policeman, there is no security. We just, all of us have to protect ourselves.
After months of living in fear, they were taken to a much safer place. Galang Refugee Camp in Indonesia, home to thousands of Vietnamese refugees, all waiting to be accepted for asylum by countries around the world. Dr. Chow's family was lucky. The First Baptist Church in Lincoln sponsored them and promised to take care of them once they arrived.
Nobody knows about Nebraska. A lot of people say, okay, I go to California and Florida and New York, but not many people, even though none people that I spoke to at the time say we go to Nebraska. So we didn't know Nebraska. I have to look it up.
They flew from Indonesia to San Francisco, their first plane trip. And then they headed to Lincoln, Nebraska.
Huge crowd of people from the church hang on the side and welcome the Chow's family. It's just a touching moment. So we really feel welcome then.
Dr. Chow and her family were part of a great wave of boat people. 100,000 came to America in 1979 alone. Big Chow graduated from Lincoln High and met her future husband at the University of Nebraska. He was a boat person too.
He escaped the country without his parents, only with one brother, teenagers at the time, and the two just took off. Take a deep breath in and out.
Dr. Big Chow graduated from the University of Nebraska Medical Center and now practices family medicine in Lincoln. Her husband is a dentist, and her brothers and sisters are all health professionals. She says that being boat people made them strong.
I feel pretty proud of being a boat people, being a refugee, and get to where I'm at right now. Those titles is nothing to be ashamed of, but to be proud of and give me a footage to move on and to work for the goals and what I want to do and accomplish it. I don't know if I get where I'm at right now just being an ordinary people and not a boat people.
I think the statute of limitations has run, so I can probably tell you this story. Claude and I were very active in the plays in our school. We would often take our breaks out in the parking lot of the school, and he would have a beer or two in the school parking lot. That's the mischievous boy I knew. He pushed the rules, broke the rules, but he was so charming when he did it, he rarely got into trouble. He knew he was being sent to Vietnam. He said that he wanted to see me so that he could tell me goodbye. And I said, no, you can't tell me goodbye. You have to tell me goodbye in person. I was at my desk, and my roommate wasn't there, and this is what's really hard to explain. It was like the room filled up with Claude, and he told me goodbye. I heard his voice. I didn't see his body or anything like that, but he was there. He was present. And he said, I've come back to tell you goodbye. And it freaked me out. So in 1986, I got a call from Nancy, who is Claude's sister, and she told me about this book written by Jan Scruggs, called To Heal a Nation, about the struggle to build the wall. And Nancy had told me that Claude was mentioned in that book. So now I had a mission. I wrote him a letter and I told him what happened to me on May 26th in 1969. And I asked him if he knew anything about Claude's death. 3 weeks later, I got a call and it was Jan Scruggs. Claude had a platoon, he was a sergeant. He spotted the wire of what he thought was a tripwire for a mine. The lieutenant that they had that was a seasoned veteran in Vietnam had been injured the day before and he wasn't with him and they had a new guy. And so when Claude radioed back and said, I think we're walking into a trap, the new guy said, you still need to do this, you still need to go forward. There was a big explosion and Claude was killed. So I said, can you tell me what time of day that was? And he said, well, it was right. We just finished eating, so it had been just like a little before, like 11:30, something like that. Well, 11:30 a.m. on May 27th is 11:30 p.m. on May 26th. I knew that he came to see me, that he came to tell me goodbye. And Jan has said that he couldn't remember their last names of the men that he relied on for his life. They just used their first names or a nickname more likely. That's why he wanted to build that wall, is so that we would remember the names and we would know that there are 58,000 souls that died in that war.
Watch our stories online at netnebraska.org/Nebraska Stories. And go to Facebook to like us and leave a comment. Join the Nebraska Stories conversation. Nebraska Stories Vietnam is funded by Humanities Nebraska and WETA.